All right, bowlers. We got to talk about this new Brunswick ball, the Ivory Rhino Pro.
Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, it's got that sharp look to
Yeah.
that white and that teal. But looks aside, how does it actually perform on the lanes?
Right.
Well, we dove into the Bowler's Mart page for it, checked out some reviews, and a particularly in-depth video review from the Hype on YouTube.
He's got good stuff.
Yeah, he really breaks things down. So we're going to break down his breakdown for you.
It'll be meta.
It's going to be meta. So right off the bat, what jumped out to me was Brunswick is really pushing this idea of versatility with the Ivory Rhino Pro.
And what's interesting is they're saying it's an advanced performance ball,
Right.
but they're also saying it's versatile for a lot of different styles,
Yeah.
which is kind of a tough needle to thread.
It is a tough needle to thread because usually when you think high performance, you think, for the people who are really laying it down and everything.
Right, or a very specific part of the lane.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, this is the window where this ball is going to work.
Exactly.
But they're saying, no, this is for everybody.
So let's dive into the specs and see if maybe that explains it a little bit.
Okay.
So we've got the vintage light bulb core.
Okay.
It's symmetrical, higher RG, and a lower differential.
Right.
Now, for our listeners who know what that means, you know what that means. But for those who maybe are newer to bowling and don't spend all their time, geeking out over RG and differential,
Sure.
could you break those terms down for us? What does that actually mean in terms of how the ball's going to react on the lane?
Okay, so let's start with symmetrical core.
Okay.
So that basically means the weight is distributed evenly throughout the ball.
Okay.
So it's going to be very predictable.
Got it.
You know what you're going to get from it.
Consistent.
Consistent, exactly.
Okay.
Now, higher RG, that refers to the ball's resistance to spinning.
Okay.
So think of it like this. Higher RG, the weight is concentrated further from the center of the ball. So it takes more energy to get it to spin.
Got it.
So it's going to spin up slower.
So it's not going to be like zipping right away.
Exactly. It's going to be smoother.
Okay.
And then you combine that with the lower differential, which that means is how quickly it transitions from skid to hook.
Okay.
So it's going to be a much smoother transition.
Okay.
You're not going to see a sharp, snap at the end.
Okay.
It's going to be very controllable.
So putting that all together, this sounds like a ball that's built for control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what they're saying? Drier lanes.
Okay.
You don't want something that's going to hook too early.
Right.
On a drier lane, you want something that's going to get down there, conserve its energy, and then make a nice controllable move.
So not a wild child, more of a controlled power kind of ball.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And then on top of that, we got the cover stock.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because we didn't even get into that yet.
We got the HK22 activator plus 3.0 Pearl reactive.
It's a mouthful.
Well, yeah, it's a mouthful, just trying to say it. I feel like we need like a dramatic, movie trailer voice to really get that.
To do it justice.
To do it justice, yeah.
HK22 activator plus 3.0.
All right, so break that down for us.
All right, so Pearl reactive. Generally, we're thinking, okay, strong reaction at the back end.
Okay.
Think of it like high traction for your ball.
Okay.
Once it hits that dry part of the lane, it's going to dig in and make a sharp turn.
All right.
Give you a strong, predictable hook.
So we've got this core that's built for control.
Right.
We've got this cover stock that's ready to, really hook when it needs to.
Yeah, once it gets there.
Once it gets there.
You don't want it hooking too early.
Right, exactly. That's the thing.
You got to control that back end.
So it sounds promising on paper, or on screen, I should say, from the Bowler's Mart page. But let's hear what the Hype thought when he actually, got this ball on the lanes.
Yeah, because the specs are one thing, but seeing it in action, that's where the real,
The proof is in the pudding.
Exactly. Yeah. Did it live up to it?
Yeah, did it live up to the Hype?
Okay, I see what you did there.
Maybe.
All right.
Maybe. So specs are one thing, but seeing it in action, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, did it live up to the hype?
That's the question, right? So the Hype starts out by comparing it to the original Rhino.
Okay.
Which a lot of people love the Rhino, but it did have a tendency to be a little early.
Yeah.
With the reaction sometimes.
It could be a little jumpy.
Yeah, and he said right away he noticed that the Ivory Rhino Pro was much cleaner through the front part of the lane.
Interesting.
Okay, which I think is huge because that was one of the knocks against the original Rhino for some people.
Right, and you know what? You just brought up something really important for bowlers to think about.
Okay.
Which is matching the ball's reaction to your style.
Okay.
So like you were saying, if you're someone with a slower ball speed or you play a straighter shot, you don't want a ball that's going to hook too early in the oil.
Right.
You need something that's going to clear that front part of the lane, conserve its energy, and then make a move.
And that's where that hierarchy really comes into play
Exactly.
because it lets it get down there a little bit more
It gets it further down the lane.
before it really starts to react.
Precisely.
All right, so cleaner through the front, check that box.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. He also compared it to a couple of other popular balls.
Okay.
He thought the Ivory Rhino Pro was similar to the Ethos in terms of its smooth motion,
Mm-hmm.
but he also said it handled heavy oil surprisingly well, which he likened to the Benchmark.
Wow, okay.
Which the Benchmark is known for being, a heavy oil beast.
Yeah. You can throw it on anything and it'll just...
It just plows through it.
Truck through, yeah.
So it's interesting that he's saying this ball kind of has that, best of both worlds kind of thing going on.
Yeah, that's what we want to hear. Versatility, right?
Versatility, right back to it.
Back to it.
So we've hit on that a couple of times now.
Yeah.
So maybe this is Brunswick actually delivering on that promise.
Maybe they're onto something.
Now, something else that the hype kept coming back to was the surface of the Ivory Rhino Pro.
Okay, interesting.
He really emphasized how important the surface is right out of the box even.
You know what? That's so crucial, and people don't talk about that enough.
It really is.
Especially new bowlers.
Yeah.
They think, I'll just get this ball.
It's good to go.
Yeah, and it's going to be magic.
It's magic right out of box.
It's just going to strike every time.
Yeah. No, you've got to think about the surface.
Surface is huge because you can have the best core, the best cover stock in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But if that surface is not right for the conditions, you are not going to get that performance out of it.
It's like having, a sports car with bald tires.
Exactly. There you go. It's not going to handle right.
It's not going to handle right.
It doesn't matter how powerful the engine is.
Exactly. So he specifically mentioned how the surface on this ball helps it to blend out the lane. Now, I've heard that term before. I understand what it means. But for those who don't, what does it mean for a ball to blend out the lane, and why is that a good thing?
Okay, so essentially blending out the lane means the ball is reacting consistently to the lane conditions from the moment it touches down to the moment it hits the pins.
Okay.
There are no dramatic movements.
So no, sudden jerk?
Exactly. No sudden jerk, no, weird overreaction.
Okay.
It's just a smooth, gradual, predictable reaction.
Okay.
And that is huge for control and predictability.
Because you want your ball to do the same thing every time.
Every single time.
I don't want it to.
You don't want to be surprised.
Yeah, you don't want any surprises out there.
No.
Okay, so he even said that with some, surface adjustments.
Yeah.
The Ivory Rhino Pro could be even more versatile.
There we go.
So I know we've said this a couple of times,
Yeah.
but I feel like for anyone listening who's maybe thinking, okay, surface, why do I keep hearing about this surface? Why is it so important? Can you break it down for us one more time? Just really hit it home. Why is surface so crucial?
Okay, so simply put, the surface of your bowling ball dictates how much friction it creates with the lane.
Okay.
And that friction influences how early or late your ball hooks.
Got it.
So think of it like this. A rougher surface, like what you would find on a dull bowling ball, creates more friction.
Okay.
So the ball's going to hook earlier.
Okay.
Because it's grabbing onto the lane sooner.
So that's why people use things like grip pads and different polishing compounds to really fine-tune that friction.
Right. You're basically customizing.
It's like customizing, the tires on your car.
There you go.
For different road conditions, like we were talking about before.
Love it.
And then on the other hand, a smoother surface like you would find on a shiny pearl reactive ball, like this Ivory Rhino Pro.
Right.
That's going to skid more and hook later.
Because it's got less friction.
Less friction, exactly.
So just gliding over the lane.
So when the hype talks about the Ivory Rhino Pro's surface and how it kind of adds to that versatility, he's saying it strikes a good balance.
Out of the box.
Right out of the box. You can throw it down there, and it's probably going to be pretty good for a lot of people.
Yeah, and then if you want to, you can fine-tune it.
Right.
To your liking.
To really dial it in.
Exactly.
And what I really like about this whole surface discussion is even if someone's listening to this and they're like, you know what, the Ivory Rhino Pro, it's not for me.
Right.
It doesn't sound like it's going to fit my game.
Yeah.
Just understanding surface in general
Yes.
can make any ball in your bag.
Any ball.
More versatile.
That's the key takeaway.
That is the key takeaway. Because so many people, I feel like, especially when you're newer to bowling, you don't realize how much you can change a ball.
Right.
Just by changing the surface.
Like having 10 balls in one.
Exactly.
Just by changing the surface.
All right, so we've covered the tech specs.
I've been the deep dive.
We did the deep dive on those. We've analyzed the hypes, on the lane review. Let's bring it all home.
Okay.
Should you get the Ivory Rhino Pro? big question.
The big
The
question.
Ivory Rhino Pro, is it right for you?
Yeah, should you go out and buy it right now?
All right, so let's recap what we've learned
Okay.
from the specs, from the hypes review, everything.
Deep dive.
The deep dive, exactly. So if you are a bowler looking for a ball that can handle medium to heavy oil, check, versatile, and you're someone who likes to really fine-tune the surface on your equipment to dial in your reaction,
Big check on that.
this sounds like it could be a really good option.
Yeah. And you know what else we didn't mention?
What's that?
Brunswick is marketing this as a really good value for the performance.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Like, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck with this one.
So that's always a good thing in my book.
Always a plus.
All right, so final thought. We've talked about all this stuff. What's the thing we maybe haven't said explicitly that's really important for people to understand about this ball, or even just bowling balls in general?
You know, I keep coming back to that point about the two-piece construction
Yeah.
and how that impacts the ball motion.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is actually part of a bigger trend we're seeing in bowling ball technology,
Okay.
where it's becoming less about finding, like, the one perfect ball.
Interesting.
You know, it used to be like, oh, you got to find that perfect ball that's going to magically make you bowl 300 every time.
Right.
I think now it's more about understanding how to make a ball work for you
Okay.
and how to adjust it to your game.
So it's less about the ball itself and more about understanding those concepts so that you can apply them to any ball.
To any ball, exactly.
I love that. So as you're, trying out different bowling balls, experimenting,
Which you should be.
which you should be,
Always experimenting.
always trying new stuff.
Yeah.
Think about like, okay, what do I need on the lanes? What kind of ball motion helps me score the best?
Exactly.
And when you start making those connections, that's when you really start unlocking, new levels to your game.
Unlocking your potential.
There you go, unlocking that potential. Well said. I think that's a perfect place to leave it.
I agree.
If you want to geek out even further on the Ivory Rhino Pro, we've got links to the BowlerSmart product page and the Hypes video review down in the show notes.
Go check them out.
Go check it out. Do your own deep dive.
Or your own deep dive.
This is just a starting point.
Exactly.
But most importantly, have fun out there.
Always.
Bowling should be fun, so get out there, enjoy the sport.
And try the Rhino.
And try the Rhino.